Hi, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I am here to do an update on what's going on this week on Project Camelot. Let's just begin. So, this is going to be a very active week because I am going out of town at the end of the week to the Yelm Festival, which is the Yelm Earth UFO Festival happening in Yelm, Washington State, and I will be there speaking along with several other speakers, notably Alex Collier. Simon Parks will be coming in through Skype, and we've also got Joanne Richards, who is the wife of Mark Richards, Captain Mark Richards, and that should be a delight. And then we'll also have some other very important speakers, Randy Kramer and others. So want to just invite you to come on up. This is Labor Day weekend, so it should be quite a crazy weekend and a good weekend to get away before I guess the whole year starts and we're out of summer and on to the rest of the year. So that's one thing going on. The other thing is that there is a new release from Rich Dolan that details some information about his a so-called interview with Kit Green, which seems that he isn't really putting out an interview. So it's not an in-person interview. It's simply an article with some quoted question-answer bits and pieces from an interview, and I'm not sure if there have been two interviews now or just one, and if this is just taken from his original interview that took him at least a month to put it out, this information, this story going that they had a misunderstanding. Apparently Kit Green thought they were doing a preliminary interview that would not be broadcast. Rich thought it was the interview and then found out he couldn't broadcast it. Then he found out he couldn't put out the transcript. Then he found out they had to do an article together. And then a month later, we come up with this. So not sure what is going on there. There are a lot of what appear to be extenuating circumstances in Kit Green's testimony, and a complete change from what he put out in these memos that apparently come as a leak that seems to be basically part of an operation in which Kit Green and Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, two physicists from To the Stars Academy, and who are part of the aviary, and or at least Hal Puthoff is. Eric Davis, I think, is a relatively new player in terms of the aviary, but nonetheless, and going back into the 80s and 90s, all of this going back to a memo, a group of memos that were leaked to an individual called James Rigney, who is an Australian researcher who, from what I understand, has not come forward on camera to do an interview. Rich Dolan apparently asked him some questions back in June, and he has a video out explaining how Rigney is saying, not saying who gave him the documents, protecting his source, and unclear why Rigney was the chosen person for this leak. And this also goes for the Admiral Wilson document leaks. I did a presentation at my Awake and Aware 2019 back in June on that Admiral Wilson document release. And then subsequently, I've done several interviews, and subsequently I've done several video blogs, I guess you might call it, overviews of the Admiral Wilson information as well as this latest leak, which is I think it's 11 pages to do with Kit Green and a dialogue between members of what was in essence Robert Bigelow's organization at the time. This is back in 2001. and Eric Davis again being in that group, and Hal Puthoff in the background, as well as, in this case, Colm Kelleher, and he is part of To the Stars as well. So if one wants to say that these leaked documents are not part of an operation and that someone just went through, as the story goes, the files of Edgar Mitchell, who is conveniently out of the picture now, passed on, the former astronaut and well-regarded individual, he was highly involved, apparently, in the background at any rate, with regard to these unacknowledged special access programs having to do with the space program, the hidden secret space program that Trump has now assigned a group called Space Command. There's already a Space Command, but this is a for the public version that's being generated. So we have a secret space program that goes back really probably to the 1940s at the very least. That also has to do with the mandate from Truman to create what was called MJ-12 at the time, to investigate the alien interference on planet Earth, and also the reverse engineering of technology, the trading of humans for technology. And that gets into the Jeffrey Epstein pedophile situation that is part of the deep state and has tentacles. Actually, him being an agent. One person I interviewed saying that he was an agent for what's called the German DVD. When you gel it all down, and that's Michael Shrimpton, former barrister. I just interviewed him on this subject, and when you really gel down the German DVD, what you really get to is the secret space program, the Nazis that came over in paperclip during the end of the war, World War II, and for all intents and purposes are now fully ensconced and established within our space program and our secret government here in the United States. So saying the German DVD, I think, at this point is something of a misdirect, although it's certainly correct. And that is just because they are obviously very much part of our government here in the United States, which is, as Jim Marrs had said and wrote a book about, calling it the Fourth Reich. And that does have tentacles going into, of course, Great Britain being our partner in this effort, and the Five Eyes, as they're called, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and I'm not sure if that's everybody. So this is the kind of thing going on behind the scenes that comprises this secret space program, and is the backdrop upon which these releases, these leaks are coming out, and with what they are regarding. So what I want to do here is just address this latest release by Kit Green by way of Rich Dolan. And it's an article Rich Dolan has written on his website. I think it came out over the weekend, so I think August 24th might be the exact date, but I'm not quite sure about that. At any rate, there's a lot of convoluted language in there. There's a lot of what I consider to be misdirects, etc. But the bottom line is that, and you have to wrap your mind around this, that all the leaks deal with the same people. So how can these particular leaks be only centered around these particular people, which are really the members of the aviary, former aviary, and current To the Stars Academy? And these players are all basically, it's a group, if you want to look at it this way, that is a go-between group between humans, the masses on one hand, and the secret space program, secret government on the other. And these individuals occupy a sort of a middle ground. They're all, almost without exception, either are currently or have been working for the CIA. And of course, if you know, the saying goes that once working for the CIA, you are always working for the CIA. there's no such thing as retirement, unless you want to say, except if you're terminated, meaning dead. So we have these individuals, and they are absolutely, totally involved in this release of memos. Now, of course, they're all denying everything, which is what they have to do along the lines of their national security oath, and that's understandable. But anyone with half a brain can see that it's no accident that they're the ones featured in the memos. So that somehow they've been recruited, asked to participate in this sort of drip feed of what is supposed to be a kind of disclosure to at least the UFO community, if you want to call it that. But in reality, it's not going very far, I don't think. Some bits and pieces are making mainstream news. Of course, the Nimitz, as they call it, that very old UFO sighting was cleansed and put out in the mainstream press. And so they are making efforts, let's say. And this latest effort has to do with the alien autopsy, which is a very old story, extremely convoluted, extremely full of both exact truth, info, and complete lies. So it's a total mixture, and apparently Kit Green is a scientist who has been involved since the very beginning, in having been a CIA officer back in the 1980s, and then supposedly being vetted for a higher level security clearance all during those years, which is what he tells Rich Dolan in this latest sort of, I don't even know what you want to call it, article by Rich Dolan, in which he's quoted sometimes, in which Kit Green is quoted sometimes. And basically, I'm going to just gel it down quickly here, and there's lots more detail to go into, but for the purposes of this update, rather than make it a very long one, and you can look at the article yourself and see what is said there. But there's some special, unique things there that I think I should highlight. So first of all, it's very interesting because it does appear very clearly that Kit Green is trying to get out from under what has become a focus on him, because back in, now if I am not sure exactly the dates, but back around 2001, he wrote a series of memos back and forth with Eric Davis and, again, Robert Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace, and this Colm Kelleher, again, all these people in the CIA. Hal Puthoff was in the mix, and there may be a few others, I'm not sure. So, and then there's also an indication within Rich Dolan's piece saying there was some quote-unquote cutting and pasting done before the release of these memos, if I understand it correctly. Now, what cutting and pasting was done and from where and what that has to do with it, Rich is time and time again insisting the memos are real. And of course, Kit Green is saying they're real. So in 2001, he agrees that he wrote these particular things and that he made certain statements about being brought into the Pentagon by a military officer, shown some, I guess it's photos, and then some that came from what appears to be the Ray Santilli alien autopsy, showing an autopsy of aliens, a particular alien, and also the report from, I guess, the physician at on hand, or whoever it is that made the diagnosis, etc., and basically came away from that saying that it was indeed an alien body, that it was an authentic autopsy back in the 1940s on that film of Ray Santilli, and also that he had seen this evidence, and that the organs were then taken to a relatively nearby base, or maybe it was Wright-Patterson. I'm not sure which exact base. I have to go research that again. It's in the documents. At any rate, fast forward to now, he's completely denying that story, saying he's now a new person, that he read a book called Forbidden Science, I believe it's called, written by Jacques Vallée, that changed his life, which I'm actually reading now to see just what a life changer it really is. I'm not so sure about that. And then he's also saying that he was a victim. So Kit Green is claiming he was a victim of an intelligence operation that has been going on even from years before the 1980s, but certainly during the 1980s, when he was brought into the Pentagon and shown this stuff, that he was influenced by the officer or the military officer that said to him that he was supposed to be shown a real alien. So he believed them. That's what he's claiming, even though he's brought in as an Air Force medical doctor to make a diagnosis, which in theory would require him to have an objective form of mind. And now he's claiming he was not objective, apparently. He was swayed by the officer in hand. And on top of it, he never was called back. And so because he wasn't called back and he wasn't given a higher clearance, he's claiming, therefore, his diagnosis was wrong. And he's also claiming that he, as I say, is a changed man, and then he was subjected to this method. And then he describes the method, or Rich Dolan describes it, in which they are basically disinfoing their own high-level consultants and technologists and medical scientists, etc., as part of the secret space program. With what intention? Having to do with what they call, I see if I can get the language right. There's a number of sort of cute phrases that they refer to. Okay, and there's also a distinction saying several, I repeat, several shots from the pictures I was shown then later appeared in the grainy Santilli film, not the body. I said it was the body. It was still the face. It was a shot of the subject. It was a shot of the wall. It was a shot of the table. It was a shot of the part of the foot. It was a shot that I could say was the same body. Now, if that isn't convoluted enough for you, we've got more convoluted testimony coming forward from Kit Green about what he saw 30 years ago and the fact that he was part of a disinfo campaign. Okay, so what he's talking about, he was the victim of something called the Active Measures Program in the CIA agency, in which he says there were hundreds involved, and it's obvious that they would continue such a program. It involves what is called CC&D, and that stands for camouflage, concealment, and deception. And the idea is that they take an individual scientist who is high level and works for them, and they convince that individual of something incorrect. And he says this is not unusual, that it is, they do it with the best trained people they've got and convince them of small things that are untrue. And what this does is, in theory, one can imagine, is in the off chance that in the future they become a whistleblower, they become somebody who is telling another person, or Russia, or a competitor or something like that, information. I'm sure this is a way they can track the information. So it's a special tracking system that allows them to know when somebody has gone off the reservation, if you will. And it also allows them to basically disinfo that character, that individual, should that individual ever decide to break their security oath. So you can see there's a motivation there. And it basically, in one fell swoop, so to speak, discredit that individual sufficiently which he is claiming now happened to him. And the way it happened to him was in the alien autopsy situation. So, and then there's a lot more backtracking and sort of convoluted stuff going on in the article, in which he's, for all intents and purposes, now claiming that he never really had much to do with what's called the CIA Weird Desk, and that he had only very low level exposure to anything so-called UFO related, and that he never had any real evidence, never saw any real evidence, never was party to any of that, that he was basically, his high level clearances only relate to other things, but not to anything to do with this kind of thing, meaning aliens, UFOs, etc. So the whole effort here appears to be, I would say, is that for all intents and purposes, back in the day, Kit Green was part of a small group. They exchanged some memos among each other. And fast forward to today, when Kit Green's name has become a bit too prominent, it has begun to attach to the alien autopsy, and this alien autopsy is targeted for disinfo, for constant, interference. There are so many. I'm doing several interviews now with Colin Wolford, who's been investigating this story for many years. And those interviews are involving questions on every step of the way. So there's quite a bit to investigate. I got a copyright strike on my channel by this individual called Spyros Malaris, who claims to own the footage that Ray Santilli claims to own. So there's a conflict between those two people. But in spite of that, YouTube chose to give me a copyright strike, and so I can't broadcast live on my main channel. So now I broadcast live on another channel, which is my PCTV channel, which has basically been cleared. The decks have been cleared over there just for live broadcasts. So, and then recently, another strike that happened to me was that they extended the time of the strike. And they did it unilaterally. They did it without my permission. They did it by claiming that the strike happened on July 2nd, because they have to give you back your YouTube broadcasting rights after 90 days. So somehow someone went in there, and even though the strike, and I have like documented evidence, I have a screenshot of my channel with a big notice on it saying, since May 22nd, you have a copyright strike, which is when I broadcast the Colin Wolford interview, in which we showed one of the pictures that Spyros claims to own and Santilli claims to own. And not only that, but this is a picture that Rich Dolan himself has used, and countless other people on their YouTube channels. None of those people got a strike, including Rich Dolan. But Malaris and the CIA chose to target me like within 24 hours of my live broadcast. So this is the kind of thing that goes on. And it was supposed to be May 22nd, means that it would have expired now. So instead, they are continuing it from saying it is going from July 2nd, which is a complete lie, until end of September, if I understand it. So if you have to ask yourself, if this alien autopsy is so fake, why do they go to so much trouble to shut me up, to shut Colin up, to shut everyone up who tries to get into the alien autopsy, and now have Kit Green climbing over himself within this so-called interview saga with Rich Dolan, in which he cannot seem to make a straight statement? If you actually read his statements, you will see that he is purposely throwing in convoluted ways of saying things rather than just saying it straight, and using incredible means and ways and means to basically place himself in a much more subordinate position than has been currently thought within the whole sector. And I've been aware of Kit Green since the early days of Camelot. That means for the past 15 years. And Rich Dolan probably knows him at least that long, and so on. He is factors in many of the Hal Puthoff sort of sagas with regard to Puthoff, because they've been very good friends, from what I understand, and colleagues for eons, really. And this has to do with going back to what's called the aviary, and you can research information on the web about that. But basically, you could say that the aviary, even then, and as is now, it's sort of reconformed into the Stars Academy, is being tasked with disclosing in bits and pieces information that will still keep the secret, but allow the secret to come out to some degree, so that when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, they can say they told you so, and maybe you won't lynch them, in essence. And believe me, the shit will hit the fan, and it's more and more coming to that. So now we have Kit Green basically going out of his way through Rich Dolan to create a scenario in which he became a victim of a disinfo program by the very people he works for. And claiming that's why he was mistaken about the alien autopsy. Now, I have a very deep black contact that has told me in no uncertain terms the alien autopsy footage that Santilli originally got from the cameraman was real, and the alien was real, etc. But what they did with it was they messed with it. So the actual footage that Santilli released was probably a combination of real and fake. All right. And what happened after that, how Spiros Malaris got involved, is anyone's guess. And I've gotten different stories from different people, different information from Ray Santilli on that, different information from Spiros on that. And I've also gotten different information from the record, so to speak, that Colin, for example, Wolford has been investigating. So you can see how convoluted this stuff is. And I can really understand where somebody would just not want to jump through these hoops and not want to bother to go down this road, because in the end of the day, these people are experts at disinfoing not only the public, but themselves. And there's also, as far as I can tell, within the testimony, within the article that Rich has written, mind control of Kit Green is evident in the statements that he makes. So that I'm going out on a limb and saying that, but that's my position. And so, make of that what you will. I can say anyone who thinks this is not an operation needs their head examined. But I am also saying that those memos are, for all intents and purposes, authentic. They were written by these guys, and this is a dialogue that did go on with those guys. And there are bits and pieces of information that are coming forward in this mass, this morass of disinfo that are valuable and useful to people. And so people that have the patience can go through and with a fine-tooth comb, gather some little bits and pieces of information. And one of those bits and pieces has to do with how Admiral Wilson, back in the day, either sent by his commanding officer, as I've said many times, which other people are not referring to, whose name was Patrick Hughes, the general, was read in. So he knew exactly what was going on in the secret space program. He knew about the unacknowledged special access programs that were being referred to at the time. And either he sent his subordinate officer, deputy of the DIA at the time, Admiral Wilson, on a sort of a witch hunt, or he wasn't party to it. And knowing the protocols of the military, it's very likely he was party to it. So then you have Admiral Wilson basically trying to investigate a program that is under the auspices of our government, called a SAP, but it's a special unacknowledged special asset, so unacknowledged SAP, I guess you say, and it is hidden by our government within that sort of banner and organization. And then behind that is an aerospace company, and that aerospace company has commercial interests, is what is being alluded to. And the idea that they are reverse engineering, or were back then, and probably, and of course still are, alien tech, and which, by the way, they had to trade humans for. So don't forget that little piece of information, which they don't want you to know. And that goes directly to the Epstein situation, because Epstein was basically an agent. I believe he was being run. If anything, he was a triple agent. He's run by the Mossad. He's run by what is the U.S. German DVD. So there's 3 so-called countries, but countries don't even matter anymore. The countries are complete illusion. But the deep state, the hidden government, and the secret space program. So this guy was being run by them to also conduct a honeypot operation, an operation in which he would be videotaping and collecting evidence on senators and various individuals like Bill Clinton, etc. But you also have to imagine in your own mind how these individuals get caught into a situation where they're in sort of a compromised position. Maybe it happens to them once, but whether it keeps happening to them over and over again seems unlikely. It seems unlikely that someone at Clinton's level wouldn't know that Epstein was an agent, wouldn't know that the island was in essence set up as a targeting operation. So this stuff, I don't know if it's for idiots or what, and I don't know if we're supposed to assume that all these people that are on upper levels of the secret space and the secret state are just stupid or what. But you can imagine there has to be some thought going into the fact that if you're on a plane and you're headed for an island and there's an individual involved, you would vet that individual to the best of your ability and figure out who is he aligned with, et cetera, et cetera. And going back into some of the background behind Epstein, you have to see that, first of all, they're never mentioning young boys, even though there's no 2 ways about it. If they had young girls, they would have had young boys. And Michael Shrimpton, to his credit, does bring this up. Then there also is an interesting thing with Epstein that I've noticed, which is that the age of all this so-called young people stays around 14, 15, never goes below that. So either Epstein was, as an agent, doing a sanitized version of pedophilia, or the deepest, darkest secrets of what was really going on that island are being sanitized and kept at a certain level because people would be up in arms if they knew the absolute truth. However you want to slice it or dice it, and then we get into who killed Epstein. And I've been doing videos about this. I've also written articles about this, and I can say, and I've been investigating this through my sources, etc. And I can say that there is a lot of reason to believe that both sides had a vested interest in killing him or letting him die. And that the side that went in and got him, who faked his death and substituted a body, and whatever they did with him subsequently, is not clear, okay? And I don't know that we would ever know unequivocally, at least unless we had a very high level source on that, which I don't at the moment, but I may get. But I can tell you that in a sense it doesn't matter. But what does matter is not the fact that Epstein is alive or dead, but that he's now out from under the scrutiny of the deep state, that the prison system being inept is a no-brainer, but nonetheless, they're not that inept. People's jobs are on the line. They're not going to be falling asleep when the most important witness, probably just about in history with regard to the pedophilia story, is under watch. And so it's very important to understand there's many ways to fake a death. They could give him this heart attack drug that basically will make him appear dead, wheel him out, put him in an ambulance and revive him, and then give the autopsy individuals another body. They can be bought off. I know that my interview with Michael Shrimpton, he didn't seem to think, he thought buying people off was problematic. I don't think so. I think that when you're faced with being bought off or killed, you probably take the buyout. You know what I'm saying? So when you gel it down to that, high-level individuals of all walks of life can be bought off. If they don't come forward immediately and publicly, they are basically caught in that web. And Sandy Hook is a perfect example of this. To my knowledge, none of the parents have come forward and claimed to be bought off, even though there's ample evidence that they have been, even publicly, and so on. So this is the kind of thing we've got going on. It is really, really convoluted. I do know that the indictments are there, that we have testimony back channel on this, that even lawyers are being turned away, that they are being made not to be party to what is actually in the indictments, etc. And the paranoia has to do with basically mass lynchings or riots in the streets, etc. Now, that's enough for now about all of this. I am going to say that these people are not telling the truth, really, in any of this sort of story that we get from any of these angles. They have a vested interest in spinning the truth one way or another. It's important to try to catch them in their lies. It may be an exercise that you become disenchanted with and are not interested in doing, but it can also be fairly, elucidating. So you can do it at your own risk, so to speak. Like I say, I'm going to be speaking in Yelm. I'm going to be talking about all of this in more detail and more. And I also will say that, what can I say? There is, okay, I'm going to go down a list of stuff that I've released recently so people can be up to speed on that. Now, the first thing is Sean David Morton, The Real History Behind Lazar, Area 51, UFOs, Dugway. We filmed basically a TV pilot out at Dugway. That day of filming, all our camera footage was done by professionals from a television network, which was True TV, and they were absolute professionals. We had warned them that their footage could be affected, and sure enough, it was completely useless. They went out. We had to go out and film on another day and repeat the same thing, which cost them double the money, which, as you know, filming a television series is quite expensive for the mainstream people. Of course, that series never went, that we were working on, that was supposed to be a complement to the conspiracy theory series with Jesse Ventura, never reached the light of day, other than the one time when a couple years later it was taken down from the shelf, and they did release it on True TV one night on a Friday night, and we did record it. We did have a recording, and we brought enough people to see it, just by notifying them. But at the same time, we have it now on our YouTube channel. So it is on my Project Camelot YouTube channel. You can watch it there. It's also linked on the About Us page on my Project Camelot portal.com website, projectcamelot.tv and projectcamelot.org. It all goes to the same place. So you can find our series there. And we shoot a whole episode at Dugway. And there is also some back channel information about Dugway that we found out is as part of that, and also having to do with one of our other witnesses who had spent some time in Dugway. So we're very familiar with what Sean's talking about in terms of things in secret space program enterprises going on in Dugway, also said to be moved underground to parts of Idaho. Very important to keep that in mind. So the latest information comes from Sean in prison. He is basically trying to state a case on the history of why they would be targeting him, also to do with his novels, what are supposed to be fiction but are actually based on fact, about a whistleblower that is called Sands of Time, that I've interviewed Sean about multiple times. I've read all of the books, and some of them are still available as audiobooks. I think there might be some printed books out there, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the access is to his books at this time. He was supposed to be working on a third, or I think it was a fourth book, when he was arrested by the SEC on these trumped up charges, and so on. So this is how it goes. So that's another thing, just updating you on a post that I made on Facebook. And if you are not already subscribed to staying up to date with Camelot, you should be subscribed to my Facebook, which is Carrie Lynn Cassidy, my personal page, which is where I put everything. There's also a Project Camelot page, and it should get a reflection on there of everything I post, but there's no guarantees. And then I have recently done an interesting interview on out-of-the-body travel with this individual who has dubbed himself a prince, called Prince Paul Mamekos. And then I also recently released a very important video called ET Intervention on Earth. I highly recommend that. Then there's the Michael Shrimpton interview, in which we discuss in depth from his perspective as a British barrister who is now suspended, as they say, because he actually tried to warn the Brits about an atomic a weapon in a nuke in the Olympics, that where it was going to be placed, and that he had tracked, and apparently was actually a real event. But he basically saved countless lives that day, but they threw him in jail anyway. I think he's out of jail now. Yeah, he's out of jail now, but he's still trying to fight the charges. Also want to say that we are going to Egypt in 2020. We have rave reviews of our last trip this year. That was in April. It'll be in April again, April 15th to the 25th. All the information is available on my website, projectcamelotportal.com. And I did a very interesting interview with Divinia Water, an update there, and I highly recommend that water as if you want to heal yourself from just about everything. I did a fascinating interview with the Grand Dame organizer of the Yelm Earth UFO Festival and Conference. Her name is Jane Cameron. Goes by Jane of Many Colors, goes by various names, and she is really a delight. And that interview is actually quite a blast. So do recommend that, and it will also give you some background on all the speakers and so on that she's invited to speak. Do read my article, Pearls Before Swine, Epstein Gets Thrown to the Wolves, and that is a very worthwhile article on my website. I have an update called Disclosure, Truth and Lies, and that was in the early part of August, as well as more about the Kit Green alien autopsy controversy, another video on that. And this is not to even mention all of the countless interviews that I have and I've been doing for the past 15 years. So that all works up to the fact that I'm trying to go see Captain Mark Richards, actually in, I think it's 2 weeks now. And I do need funding to make the trip. I am very low on funds. Apparently the donations over the year have been less. I don't know if that's because people are making less. I know I have more subscribers, I have more viewers, but they're donating less. So what that's all about, I can't say. All I can say is myself, we don't even have a webmaster anymore because they basically quit, but we have a website, and we have to pay all these sort of overhead charges to keep the website on the air, so to speak. And also my cameraman and editor, co-editor, he's also does all the banners and has been with me on all of the shooting, all the conferences, and also the documentaries, of which we've made several. One in Göbekli Tepe, another one which is in Turkey, and we're planning a Turkey trip, by the way. So if you're interested in coming to Turkey with us, it's being planned for some time around, I believe it is May of 2020, and we're putting that itinerary together now. So stand by for that. But if you're interested in coming to Turkey with me and Maria Wheatley, who is an expert dowser and accompanies me on my Project Camelot Egypt tour, and I've interviewed her countless times, etc. So you can find out more about her by watching my video interviews with her. And so write to me if you're interested in coming to Turkey. So that is in the works. And then what else was I going to say? We have a documentary, short one on Malta. And that's a fascinating place, very, very interesting. I've done some interviews over there as well, and hope to go back on a tour there at some point in the future. And so that's Göbekli Tepe, Egypt, and Malta. Those are 3 documentaries. And then I made my own documentary back in Adam's Calendar, which is South Africa, with Michael Tellinger, which is an extremely, I think, excellent documentary, and chock full of fabulous information about that site and the various ancient origins of the Anunnaki input with the and involvement in the past of humanity. So highly recommend that. All of that is available on my YouTube channel, my main YouTube channel called Project Camelot. Just put Project Camelot, you should get there. There are over 800 videos, so you know you're in the right place if you land on those. And then I have what's called a PCTV YouTube channel that I'm now only broadcasting on live, and then taking the video down and putting it on the main channel. So that's the process I have to go through right now because of this extended copyright strike that has been given to me actually illegally. So any help is really appreciated. We're working really hard over here. I think people like us at the front lines are what you absolutely are going to want and need on the case as we go into the future, and disclosing as much information as possible, sharing my 15 years of contacts in both above top secret and below, and with you the information, and really sort of fighting the good fight for you. So if you can afford once a month to send me $5, that's like an amazing thing, and it would actually help me hugely, because I have 231,000 at last count subscribers, and again 63 million viewers worldwide. So at some point a little bit of help would be really appreciated. Okay, this is a labor of love. It is also a full-time job at this time. So to keep it a full-time job and to keep me going, and the rest of my team, who is behind the scenes for the most part, I would appreciate any donations you can give. At the same time, I am doing a couple of interviews this week. I'm going to be talking to Colin Wolford on Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And we're going to be delving in, again, in some more depth into these latest so-called disclosures by Kit Green and Rich Dolan. We're also going to be talking about the alien autopsy as well, and certain things about that that Colin is coming across in his travels, and then I will be interviewing another individual about the origins of humanity that whose name is not right in front of me, but let me see if I can grab it. Leon Beebe or Bibby. I'm not sure how you say his last name. He's an author, and we'll be talking about his take on the history of the ancient origins of humanity. So that'll be on Wednesday. So quite a full week, and thanks for your time and for watching, and have a great night. Take care. Bye-bye.